Oh, hi guys. So, it's another gorgeous day today. Sun shining, blue skies. I'm here in the workshop. Going to do a bit more work on this video card, and I might just go and hit the sun, I think. But anyway, this is our troublesome graphics card from yesterday. And if you remember, we put this into a computer, and basically nothing really happened. The computer doesn't detect the card. We looked around the card, we couldn't find any voltages apart from the 12 volts coming in, 0.7 volts on this little regulator coil here, and that was about it. So I said, next thing would be to check the PCI, this little end connector here where we have 5 volts and 12 volts coming in, see where it's going to. I suspect it's going to these regulators, maybe see why this one isn't working. Because I believe that this part of the board has to start up first to enable this part. But if you remember, when we connected this up, we only had two 6-way 12-volt connectors here, and this we should have a 6 and a 12. Now I looked on Google, and it basically said that in some cases, put two 6-ways in, it'll work. I thought, okay, in some cases, but that surely means in some cases put two 6-ways there and it won't work. As soon as we don't have anything happening, I think the next thing we should do is to put an 8-way onto here. Now, I haven't got an 8-way connector. My workshop power supply has two 6-ways. I don't have an 8-way. I don't have an adapter. But thinking logically, what we have here, we have 12-volt connectors. The only wires that go to these are the yellow ones, 12 volt, and the black ones, ground. So these two pins here, the ones that are not being used when we put the 6-way in, will either connect to ground or 12. I mean, that's it. They can't be connecting to anything else. So I had a look on Google and just a quick search for 8-pin PCI Express power plug, pin out, to see what's connected. I would like to show this on the computer, but using the mobile phone, it really isn't easy. So what I've done is I've printed the pin out here. And this basically shows you this connector is a CPU power connector. This is the 8-pin that's on my power supply. This one is a 6-pin for PCIe graphics card, and this is an 8-pin. So you'll see we've got black ones and yellow ones, which is what the coloured wires have. But on an 8-pin, we have a blue and a green. Now this blue and the green can only be connecting to either 12 or ground, because there's only 12 or ground coming in. And if you look here, it's saying black is ground, yellow is 12 volts. A and B are sense inputs. So these are for the circuitry, probably on the graphics card rather than the power supply, to sense the voltage. And a little bit further down, I don't know if you can read this, but what this is basically saying is that those sense inputs, you can just connect them to 0 volts to ground. That's all we need to do. So that's what we're going to do. Now, to do that effectively, we're just going to solder some wires on the back of here. Now, we want to make sure we've got the right pins. That's the important thing first. So, I'll get the power supply from yesterday. One moment. I'd forgotten I'd actually left this plugged in, so it took me a minute just to disconnect it. So let's look at the connectors. This is the 8-pin. Now this goes to the motherboard, to the CPU. Physically, you can't even plug this into here because the way this is wired is different. Effectively, it's back to front for this graphics card. So it's designed so you cannot even plug that in. Now we'll find the two 6-ways. So that's one of them. So this is a 6-way. Once we get it the right way around, it's in the 6. Let's find the other 6-way. It's hiding yet, it's here. And this is the one that I connected to the 8-way. So again, we have 8. So you can see this side is 12 volts, the black, this side is 0 volt, and we have the 2 spare ones. And looking on the diagram, the 2 spare ones, one of them is ground, so that connects to one of the blacks, and the green one is a sense, which it says you connect to ground. So all we need to do to get this working is, you can see the black wire goes to the top pin, so it's the far inwards, the ones near the edge of the board, the 12s. So these far ends are ground, which is the far end. And all we need to do is connect these 2 spare pins, the ones we have connected nothing, to ground. That's what that information was saying. And basically, we just need a little bit of wire to do this and a soldering iron. So, here's my soldering iron. I'm going to talk later, or to another point, I'm going to do some videos on my workshop equipment. We'll look at what you need, and we'll look at what's nice to have. But there are some things that are essential, and one of them is a soldering iron. And this is a T12, and I'll do a video later to explain why this is what you need. Anyway, soldering iron. Solder, leaded solder. This is not lead free, this is leaded. This is much easier to work with than that lead free stuff. It's horrible to work with. I suggest you work with this. Once you've mastered soldering with this, maybe have a go with the lead free. But personally, although yes, I have lead free solder here, I use this. We'll switch the soldering iron on. This one will take a few seconds to warm up on the T12. And then we need a little bit of wire. We may as well use something like this. It's just an old resistor component. It's got a stiff wire on the end, so let's use that. Okay, so the easiest way to get this to solder is to use some flux. And I'm going to put the flux on the 2 pins we want to solder, and we're going to connect them to ground, which is any of these. So the N3. The soldering iron is now on. And the first thing we'll do is add some lead-free solder. This soldering iron, and you can see the end of that, this is quite a big chunky end. This is what's called a BC3 tip. They're very easy to interchange on these soldering irons. This is what you need for this sort of work. You don't want a fine point soldering iron. The bigger, fatter end on that there is, the more heat you can get into the board, and this is what you need. So let's first of all just apply the soldering iron and add a little bit of solder to these connectors. See, I'm just holding a few seconds. Some of you might want to use a solder extractor fan. I mean, personally, I've been doing this since the 1980s and I haven't died yet. If there's a lot of smoke coming off, if I'm working on BGA chips, I use a fan, just an old fan from a computer power supply, and I just use that to blow the fumes away from my face. It's not that I'm extracting them, I'm just getting them away from the face. Okay, so this is where you find you want a lot of heat. Actually, this is probably going to be easier if I actually disconnect the connector, because the heat is travelling back up the wire. It's just making life more difficult for myself. So let's disconnect that. Yeah, you see now it's soldered without any problem. So, our little thick bit of wire, and we're just going to tack this on here. 1, 2, bend it around the corner. A little bit more flux on this. This is an old resistor, it's probably a bit corroded. If you don't find things are soldering very well, a little bit more flux, a little bit more solder, and it's on. And you think it's on and it's not on. Now it's on. Okay, so we've basically now just cobbled this. The graphics card now thinks it has a 6-way and 8-way, and it now basically we're just fooling it. It thinks, okay, 6-way and 8-way, and it's happy with that. So we'll connect the connector back on. Well, let's just double sure, you know, let's have nothing stupid going on here. There's many times when you don't check your work and then you've done something silly and it doesn't work and you'll waste a lot of time. So let's just go from any of the black ones. These are all black and they should all connect together. Okay, so I'm just connecting from any of the black ones and just going to make sure that all these are now, yeah, they're all soldered now. I can check in the end of the connector here. Okay, so we now have told this graphics card you have an 8-way connector. So let's see now, has that fixed the problem? Does it now start up? So just again, it's always a very good idea when you're working like this to tidy up after yourself. Don't mess around the workshop. Otherwise, sooner or later, something's going to fall on something, it's going to short out, and you're going to end up with far more problems than you started off with. So it really is sensible to keep your workspace clean and tidy. Okay, even to the point where I'm going to straighten these wires out. Okay, so let's get the test rig again. This is the one we used yesterday. I mistakenly said this was a socket 7 motherboard. It's not. This is LGA 755. This is a Core 2 Duo of some sort. These processors, these are like £3 or £4, euros, whatever it is in your country. Motherboards, you can find a motherboard for 775 for £10–20. The cheapest chips. Use something like this. Sooner or later, you're going to break it. When you break it, if you can't fix it, in the bin. Or, well, yeah, before it goes in the bin, take all the useful parts off it and then in the bin. So, as I say, don't think, okay, I'm testing the latest GTX 3080Z. I've got some faulty ones. I need to have a very powerful machine. You're not trying to run benchmarks on this. You're just trying to get the thing working. So, do yourself a favour. Use some cheap board like this. That's not really worth anything. Okay, so there's the graphics card in. This time I'll also connect the monitor. You noticed yesterday it was making the beep 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 noise, which is saying there's no graphics card. But actually, sometimes that sound can mean that there's no monitor connected. Now we know as a fact on this board we've got no voltages, so it is a problem on the graphics card. But it makes sense. Always connect a monitor, because one day it's going to go the beep beep beep, and the reason is because you didn't have the damn monitor plugged into it. Then you're going to spend a lot of time messing around and eventually you might figure out what you did wrong. Eventually you may not, so that makes sense. So we have that. Here's my little heatsink again. We're going to connect the power supply. Got a 6-way in here, another 6-way in here, but it now thinks it's an 8-way. Oh, that is the 8-way, and you see it will not fit in here. That's the one for the processor. And we have somewhere on here, where's it gone hiding? The other 6-way. Okay. Graphics card seated properly. We have a heatsink. Already we know this was cold yesterday, but again, you never know. It might now power up. So let's have a look. Power supplies on. Power's on. Heatsink. And what do we have? Okay, it's booting. Would you believe it? It's powered up. We got one beep there. We got one beep and it's powered up. So it looks like, I didn't actually see if I saw a picture because of the lack of a heatsink, but me just, I have a monitor here, which unfortunately you can't see it. We now switch that to the DVI connector, and I'm going to power it again. Again, it's not getting particularly hot at the moment. Beep. Ah, monitor's on. And I have a picture. I have a picture on the screen. Well, there you go. I mean, that's just to show what can happen here. I'm not going to edit this video. You can all see it. I do now have a picture on the screen. So all that business of measuring voltages was completely irrelevant in this case. What I will say, I haven't got a good picture. I've got a picture with artifacts on the screen. I'll just actually let me show you. I'm going to switch this camera to the other side. One moment. Okay, we're back on. So power supply on, power on. Let's see what this does here. Beep. Yeah, monitor's coming on, and I have some dots. You probably see there's some dots on that picture, so there's probably something else wrong here. But anyway, there we go. So next thing, I guess, is to see why we have a bad picture. Okay, so what I've done is I've partially reassembled this card. I haven't put the back panel on, but I've got a few screws in there, 4 of them around the GPU and a couple at either end, so it's holding heatsink in place. And I've connected the hard drive to the rig there, and I've powered into Windows. And basically, this is what I've got. It's you can see it's like a really weird effect on there, like a multi-image thing. I've never seen that before. That's new to me. So other than that, I had a few like little artifacts when it first loads up. Sorry, the focus has gone here. There we go. I'd like a few little artifacts when it first loads up. Then we come to this. I'll restart it. You can see I'm doing this handheld now. It's just so we can actually see what's going on here. So I can actually see what I have here. I'll try and restart this PC. Otherwise, I'll just shut it down. There's nothing on this hard drive of any importance. If I eventually just if I corrupt it, it doesn't matter. So let's just force this to shut down. Okay, and then let's restart it again and see what happens this time. So we get the BIOS screen. There's little dots on that. Then it's going to go into load. So now that's okay. That was clean, no problems on the screen there. It's when it went into Windows that the strange thing seems to happen. So that looks good. Hey, there you go. Would you believe that? It's now working. Was that a problem with the wrong driver? I mean, this test rig had another graphics card in before. Would you believe that? So I've never seen that before. What I'm going to do with this now is I'll load the correct drivers for this graphics card, and after I've loaded them, we'll come back and we'll have a look to see what it does there. Hey guys, so there we have the GTX 280 back in the test rig, and basically I powered this up. It loads into Windows. It's not the fastest machine in the world, being a Core 2 Duo, but it gets into Windows. And I downloaded the drivers. I couldn't find Windows 10 drivers from the Gigabyte website for this card, only up to Windows 7. So basically I went onto the NVIDIA website, found the Windows 10 drivers and loaded them. And when it loaded up, yeah, I mean, I've got a perfect picture in Windows. It's been stable. It hasn't had a problem. But when it loaded up, I found it was using Intel HD Color. It's not using the Geforce drivers. So I thought, okay, well, you know, maybe when I first put the card in, before I loaded the drivers, I mean, remember this is a test rig, so it has all sorts of video cards put in here, that possibly it had just got a bit confused, especially that thing you saw earlier where I had like the multiple pictures on the screen. That seemed to be drivers related. So when the computer restarted, I think it went back to kind of like a default driver. So I thought, okay, maybe it hasn't put the drivers up. So I then went into the device manager, and it says it's a GTX 280 there. It knows it's there. But in the properties, it says that Windows stopped this device because it reported a problem, error 43. So I thought, okay, probably a driver mess up. So I basically uninstalled the drivers, restarted the machine, went through the whole process again, installed the drivers, everything's stable, it installs the drivers. The Geforce installer sees it's a 280, it does the hardware compatibility check, it's happy that it's there, it installs them. But once again, go into Windows and it's using Intel HD Color, device manager, I have this error 43. So, I mean, really, I'm a hardware engineer, I'm not a software guy. But I thought, well, okay, this rig has a lot of different graphics cards put in here at different times. Maybe the Windows 10 has just got screwed, you know, with all this messing around with different hardware. So I thought I'd just reinstall Windows from a USB. It doesn't take too long. But before I did that, I thought, you know, hey, I'm missing the point here. Let's just Google for this error 43. So I went in and Googled for that. GTX 280, Windows desktop device, error 43. And straight away, I find obviously some hits. I'm not the first person to see this one. And basically it says the error code 43 is usually displayed in the status box on the hardware properties of Windows. This error is related to your graphics card. Yeah, sure, I know that. The common cause for error code 43 can be your GPU temperature. In order to fix this problem, you need to make sure the graphics card is free from dust. Now, I mean, this card, it came from the flea market, €10. As I say, the guy I got this from, he's hit and miss. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. Sometimes it kinda. And we didn't really find anything wrong with this. If I connected the 6 and the 8-way cable on there in the first place, it would have booted up. And we would have said, hey, he sold me a good card. Okay, I mean, these things are worth 20 or 30 quid. They're not a valuable card, but come on, €10. And just for the experience, it is worth having. So, you think, hey, I got a good card. You'd load into Windows. You think, no, I don't. You'd find this problem I have. And if you recall, earlier on when I took this apart, one of the first things I said is that the grey heatsink compound on the GPU was very dry. I said, and this is not conducting heat properly. It's quite possible this GPU is burnt out, but we'll carry on. So, also there's quite a bit of dust and dirt in here. You remember I actually put this card in the sink with soap and water, washed it and dried it, and then removed all the gunk. But it doesn't get around the fact we had this bad heatsink compound, the grey stuff. So what I did is when I put this back together, I just put a blob of this stuff. This is where I can't remember where I put it now. Yeah, this stuff. This is just heatsink compound. This is what I normally use if I'm working on amplifiers, power supplies, anything like that, where there's a power transistor or a MOSFET, and it fixes the heatsink and it needs some of this. And this, it works. I mean, I put this in like, you know, 2 kilowatt audio amplifiers, and it never has a problem. But I do remember trying this when I was trying to overclock a couple of my retro gaming rigs, and straight away the temperature was too high. The computer will run at the normal speed. As soon as I try to overclock it, it says it's too hot. So really, I put a bit of this on, and probably this stuff is not good. Either that, or I didn't put enough on, or there's like an air gap between the GPU and the heatsink. Maybe it needs like you get like these heat conducting pads, a bit like that white stuff I showed you that was on the various chips in there. So I've switched it off. I'm not going to run it anymore. I can feel a good amount of heat coming out the fan, and I'm not running any. I mean, I was going to run Thermark or something on this, but I'm not going to do. It's obviously got some problems, and it suggests that the heatsink compound really isn't good. This would make sense because I'm assuming this ended up at the flea market because it was faulty, and it was probably faulty because the heatsink compound had dried up, and whoever had this before was getting the same problem. So all that comes together. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to get some better heatsink compound, maybe get some of these pads. I'll order some. I don't have any here. So this will go back on the shelf for a while, and then hopefully we have a good graphics card. I think this is a good card, and I suspect that the only problem was that heatsink compound had dried out and gone kind of like dusty. Okay, so we'll end that one there now. I will upload the video, and then later, I mean, over here, I'm in the Canary Islands. It's paradise, but the postal service is awful. So for me to get some of these heat conducting pads from AliExpress is going to take a few weeks. Everything here is, as the Spanish would say, tranquillo mañana, mañana. Chill, tomorrow. And that's the culture. So, okay. We'll wait, and I will upload this video because I'd like to get this channel running, and then a little bit later, when the heatsink compound arrives, this will be back in the test rig, and we can have a look to see if we got a good card. Okay, guys, cheers.